I feel like we all have those games from our childhood that we vaguely remember playing but don't think we ever actually beat or made it very far in. For me, one of those games is SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. So anyway, I thought it would be fun to maybe give 6-year-old me some justice and finally 100% the game, and see how good the game actually is versus just my nostalgia. So the story starts off with Plankton creating a bunch of robots that he wants to use to take over Bikini Bottom, and eventually get the Krabby Patty's secret formula. However, he for some reason has an obedience switch on the machine and it's set to do not obey. So yeah, in a single sentence, this game is really just about cleaning up Plankton's mess. We then jump cut to SpongeBob, who's consulting with Gary about what he should do. SpongeBob's house is really just kind of a tutorial level. We have to collect shiny objects to open up doors and eventually get our first spatula so we can leave, and there are a bunch of signs along the way that we can use to help figure out the game mechanics. When we do finally beat the tutorial and make it out of our house, Plankton's there waiting, and of course we team up with him because he only has the purest of intentions. Looking around a little bit, I was able to find a golden pair of underwear, which gives us an extra bit of health when we're going through the levels. I mean, I'm kind of an epic gamer, so I don't really think I'll need it, but I figured might as well just grab it anyway. Our first actual level is Jellyfish Fields, and it starts with this scene where Squidward brutally gets ganged up on and stung by a bunch of jellyfish. So naturally it's up to us to go get some King Jellyfish jelly to help fix him up. It was here that I was first introduced to the clam mechanic. Now why giving this clam 125 shiny objects makes that plane come down and create a bridge for us is beyond my capabilities, but I'd like to think that it's because the clam is connected to the mafia and I should probably just pay them whatever they want in the future. I saw this golden spatula down here, but when I tried to jump, I just immediately phased through it, so I think I need to come back later and get it. Shortly after, I found my first sock. Now, socks, unlike spatulas, don't have any names or areas associated with them, so if it just says 7 in a level, the 7 could be anywhere in the level, so they're a little bit more difficult to find than the spatulas. Shortly after, I discovered that to get that golden spatula from earlier, I needed to use this bungee jump system in order to collect it. When we make it through the loading zone and into the next stage of the level, we're greeted by Mermaid Man and this fun slide section, which I actually really enjoyed the slide sections. They were probably my favorite part of the game. After the slide section, we get to play as Patrick for the first time, and as you just saw, he has the ability to throw watermelons, which has a variety of different uses. But yeah, there's literally this whole cool cave section dedicated to Patrick and his ability to throw these watermelon to do random stuff. I eventually made it to this area of the level, which has a hidden spatula associated with it. However, at the time I didn't know that you could stun those robots and then throw them at these metal things that I'm standing on. However, what I was able to do was blow up the machine that created them, making it impossible in this stage of the level for me to solve the puzzle. When we finally make it to the top of the mountain, we stumble upon King Jellyfish taking a shower, and he naturally isn't too happy about that. Naturally, since King Jellyfish is the first boss in the game, it's not going to be very hard. All we have to do is jump over his attacks and hit him while he's down. After we repeat the process 3 times, he eventually forks over his sweet, sweet jelly. After finishing the level, I decided to take a look at the map and realized I still had a bit of a ways to go. Well, that's enough dilly-dallying. It's time to take the taxi to the next level. And in this case, it's downtown Bikini Bottom, where all the robots are just causing a big mess. We run into Mrs. Puff, and she says she has a golden spatula for us if we're able to recover all the steering wheels. However, what Mrs. Puff failed to tell us was that there are these new robots that we had to ground pound to destroy. There was also a new ability that allowed SpongeBob to roll into a ball and gain some extra speed. Then we get to play as Sandy for the first time, and she's really good at navigating rooftops because of her lasso ability, which allows her to glide for some extra distance on her jumps. Sandy becomes even more useful when we move to the tops of the buildings because she has this lasso ability to grab onto these balls and swing from them. In the third area, we run into Mr. Krabs, and he wants us to bungee jump off the building to destroy all the tikis that are floating around it. It's nothing too hard, you're pretty much just going up and down until you finally hit all the tikis. Then he, of course, praises us with a golden spatula. There's actually one more area we need to go to for this level, but as you can see, it was a bit out of the way and a little bit tricky to get to. This last area was in fact a battle tower, which we had to beat waves of enemies to slowly move down it and eventually claim the prize at the bottom. But yeah, after all that wandering around and random tasks, we're able to go give Mrs. Puffs all the steering wheels she wants. Level 3 is a sick beach level, and we're introduced to these flying umbrella guys who can just apparently control the weather, of all things. Those guys actually weren't that bad to deal with, because if you're just walking around, they can't hit you with their lightning. But yeah, the first part of this level is this kind of light puzzle where we have to bounce this light across a bunch of different lifeguard stations. Perhaps even trickier than that though is this parkour section we have to do as Patrick, which is even on a timer. Speaking of timers, there's this section we have to navigate before the moat fills up completely. Once we make it out on the other side of that sand castle, we get to navigate this cool cave section. And of course, after having to trudge through that cave, the game rewards us with a fun amusement park section. The amusement park is actually full of a bunch of mini games such as this Wakatiki section. And at the end of it, you get to freeze the entire lagoon just to go collect this one spatula, which I thought was kind of a unique way to hide one. After the beach level, we're tasked with fighting Robot Sandy, and as you can see, she has just a little bit more health than King Jellyfish. I actually really like the formatting of these boss fights, because the first stage you're playing as character 1, and then the second stage we're playing as Patrick, which would be character 2. And then on the third stage, we actually go back to character 1, and it's a little bit more difficult. So I like how it adds variety to the boss fight. Well, now that we've taken care of that bucket of bolts, King Trident rewards us with a golden spatula, and we're ready to move to the next set of levels in Bikini Bottom. This new part of Bikini Bottom has Sandy's tree dome, but even more important is that it gives us the ability to bubble bowl. Bubble bowling's honestly not the most useful skill, but you know, we can use it to get some extra range on our attacks and solve some other puzzles while we're at it. Well, next on the list is to help Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy by heading down to their lair and taking care of the robots that have overrun it. In this level, we're introduced to this cowboy robot which can summon smaller robots to come and attack us. They run away after you hit them, but honestly, they're not really that much of a problem. However, unlike the enemies, the puzzles are actually starting to heat up a little bit. I might also add the level design to that too, because this disco floor looked pretty sick. However, the most difficult part of this level was probably doing this whole Rube Goldberg Marvel maze thing and activating all the things at the right time to get the marble to the end. There was also this loud little shrimp guy who we had to throw bowling balls at to defeat him. Now that we've successfully cleared out Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy's lair, it's time to take the taxi over to Rock Bottom. I really like the neon aura of Rock Bottom combined with those robots that you have to sneak past. It just is like a really cool vibe, and it's my favorite area of the game by far, I'm just gonna say that. While the outside looks extremely cool, it doesn't even slow down on the inside with this really sick museum heist. And as all good levels should, this level has a really cool neon slide time trial. After that thrilling level, I decide to take a little bit of a break and grab this quick and easy golden spatula that's on the top of the retirement home. Alright, next level is Sand Mountain, and it's probably my second favorite level in the entire game, because what it is essentially a bunch of different slides that we get to go down and complete different tasks while we're going down them. As you can imagine, each slide has their own set of golden spatulas, time trials, and socks to pick up while going down. However, the most difficult out of all of them is the snowman one, where you have to destroy all 8 snowmen just for one sock. I thought the design for each slide was great, including this one where after we follow a sand ball all the way down, we get to enter a secret tunnel that had opened up through the mountain. Well, now that I have enough golden spatulas to go to the next part of town, which actually has the chum bucket in it, we're faced with this boss fight against Robo Patrick. This one, we get to use SpongeBob and Sandy to avoid all the attacks of Robo Patrick and then attack it while it's down. But as you can tell by what's on my screen, honestly, this boss fight was the most difficult out of all of them by far. In this next part of town, we learn how to shoot a bubble missile that we can control to accomplish certain objectives. After getting this new bubble ability, I decided to go and check out some of the golden spatulas that I missed. The next thing I decided to try out are the dream levels. Now the dream levels generally follow a specific character like Squidward or Sandy or Mr. Krabs, and essentially what they are is difficult sections of a certain aspect of the game. For example, you can see that Sandy's dream is a difficult section of slides. However, since the dream levels were designed to be these difficult challenges, I decided it might be better to do levels like Kelp Forest first before I do them, just kind of for pacing of the game and keeping it interesting. The Kelp Forest really wasn't my favorite section, but you know, we did get some cool platforming sections like this and some other niche puzzles. However, I think the most annoying out of all these puzzles was this one, where we basically had to pick up and throw tikis as Patrick, and then go switch to SpongeBob to hit the targets that opened up with our cruise missile. And this was just a lot of running back and forth, and it was a little annoying. Like, it was a good idea, but I felt like it wasn't executed very well. Alright, now after learning that all of that was just so Barnacle Boy can trim his nose hairs a little faster, I'm ready to move on. Also, I just want to say that usually I'm a really big fan of all the slides in this game, but this vine one just wasn't really that fun because, I mean, you just had to lock in on the super skinny vines the whole time, and it didn't really feel like there was that much interesting stuff going on in the level itself. The next level was the Flying Dutchman level, and honestly, at first I was really excited, and then afterwards I was maybe a little disappointed. I mean, the level's just kind of green and dead the whole time. There's some puzzles, but it's really more just like you're walking through it and kind of dealing with the annoying robots along the way. I guess I did find it a little cool to be able to use my cruise missiles to take out these bigger robots. Also, for what it's worth, there is some charm to swinging over a swamp with Sandy. Another interesting thing I saw was this sideways wall jump that we get to do with SpongeBob. This is the only level where this happens, and I think it's kind of weird that that's the case, but it's still kind of interesting that they decided to include it. Bang. And destroyed. To end off the level, we go and board the robot pirate ship that's full of booby traps and electricity, as you can see. The Flying Dutchman thanks us with a golden spatula, but then Sandy had to open her big mouth and get into an argument with the poor ghost. And that's the story of how we end up fighting him after we just spent the entire level trying to help him. One more quick thing about this level was that when I was going back to look for the golden spatulas that I missed, I found this cool kind of hazardous swamp run that I thought was pretty enjoyable. Well, now that all the regular levels are done, I figured it's time to go back and try all the challenging dream levels again. I think anyone would agree that the worst one of all is Squidward's, which is pretty much just a series of precise jumps. It's really not difficult, but it's time consuming and you can mess up if you're not careful. And yes, I mean the entire level is just literally this kind of jumping. Although, if you just go by in terms of difficulty, you'll find that Mr. Krabs' dream is actually a little bit more difficult than Squidward's. It's pretty much just a fight where we have to destroy a certain number of each type of robot before we can finally destroy the factory that makes them. However, once you destroy your first factory, I discovered that you can just safely sit where the factory once was and shoot bubble missiles down at the remaining robots. I mean, the strategy takes a while, but it gets the job done consistently, if that counts for anything. However, this strategy doesn't work for these trio guys because the cruise missile can't take down all three of them before they regenerate. I mean, killing these guys can be a little tricky without taking damage, but it's still a lot easier than trying to deal with all three of the types of robots at the same time. By far, my favorite dream was Patrick's dream, because all you gotta do is go in there and talk to him and he just gives you a golden spatula. Now that's what a true friend is all about, if you ask me. I did have to backtrack to Sandy's dream for a little bit because there were some collectibles I missed, but after getting this last sock I was ready to head out. Now that we finally collected all of Patrick's socks, we can go turn them in for some golden spatula rewards. And man, let me tell you, nothing felt better than finally being done with looking for socks that Patrick doesn't even wear. Like, SpongeBob wears socks, it makes sense to go get his socks, but Patrick literally never wears socks, so it's like, why are we even collecting these? We finally go confront the last boss, and what is this mime even doing here? Also, you're telling me instead of flicking the lever, Plankton just changes them both to obey. So what's the point of even having the lever? And it's Plankton's plan, so of course it didn't work, and instead we're fighting this robot Plankton guy. This boss fight really isn't that bad. I like the narration fish that just pops up whenever something happens, but then all we have to do is destroy these green bubbles and we're all set with the boss fight. Of course, that's only phase 1 of the boss fight though. In phase 2, we're inside of the robot SpongeBob and we have to fight all these robots on these narrow small platforms to eventually make it to Robo Plankton and we can fight him. He has this laser attack that's super rapid fire, but also really easy to dodge. So dealing with him really is more of a waiting game rather than, you know, a skill check is kind of what he feels like. Eventually, we make our way to the core, which can be destroyed with a carefully placed bubble cruise missile. But yeah, after just doing that a few times, Robot SpongeBob is down for the count. And of course, our solution is just to create even more copies of Robot Plankton so that way they're too busy destroying each other to be able to destroy Bikini Bottom. And that would mark the end of the story mode. While the credits roll, they actually have this little like fun area you can roll around and do stuff in, which I actually kind of miss this from old games. You know, once the credits start rolling, that kind of feels like it's the end of the game, but you know, here the credits roll while you just get to go and do stuff. Although I do kind of wish it was a little more interesting. But I think this is just kind of a feature of older games that I kind of miss. Even though I finished the story and collected all the socks, there were still some golden spatulas I was missing. So now I gotta go back and finally finish those off. And I started with Sandy's Tree Dome, which I realized I never actually entered for some reason. Then, of course, after Sandy's Tree Dome, I had actually quite a few things I missed in the Kelp Forest that I had to go back for. And after the Kelp Forest, I had to go back to the Flying Dutchman. And after that, I had to go back to Sand Mountain. And now we're back in Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy's lair. And now we're back in Rock Bottom, which is, of course, something that I would never be upset about. Really, all the levels just should have been parts of Rock Bottom. But of course, I couldn't stay in Rock Bottom forever. I had to go downtown to get some stuff I missed. And after that, back to Jellyfish Fields. And then into Squidward's house for this Steam achievement. Now the last thing I have to do is just grind for shiny objects. For now we're in Sand Mountain so I can buy the last golden spatulas off Mr. Krabs. Yeah, this was fun. I hope that greedy crab is happy. Now that's all the spatulas, but there was still one last thing that I could buy, so I had to go back here and grind for 40,000 more shiny objects. It honestly makes no sense why this movie ticket is 40,000 shiny objects, but what are you gonna do, man? Inflation or something. I was really hoping this movie theater ticket was gonna be some kind of bonus level, but it's just an art book, so that was kinda disappointing. Overall, I'd say this was just a fun little cute game from my childhood. It was enjoyable to play, maybe not the most refined, but it had good difficulty progression and some interesting puzzle solving here and there, so overall it's pretty okay. Also, if you're looking to max out your aura, you could hit that sweet subscribe button.